Hello Wolfpack, I thought I'd bring you a quick little update on the market because there is a little bit of negative sentiment going around. That's completely justified. We've been away from all-time highs. We made our all-time high actually on October the 20th, which is about 2 to 3 weeks ago, almost 3 weeks, right? So it's been a while, been over 20 days since we were at all-time highs in Bitcoin. And I know what a lot of you are thinking, well, this is meant to be a peak bull market, what's going on? And I completely understand that, and I want you to really look into the actual charting, look into the historical trends. The fact of the matter is, and I went over this in the last Bitcoin video I did, I'm not going to go over it again in this video because there's no point, right? I've already discussed this information, so go ahead and check that out. But the point of the matter is that, we usually see, every single cycle, right? This isn't usually, this is every time we see a late October correction and it extends into early November. So technically, what we're seeing now is actually completely normal. We've seen this before multiple times, right? 2 or 3 times now, and it's nothing to be overly concerned about, provided we stay above some of the levels that I'm going to be indicating here in a second, right? So provided we stay above those levels, this is technically completely normal and healthy market movement, and it should be over, right, according to the 2017 cycle, by, I think it was the 14th of November to the 16th of November. So that's the range, right? If we're still... Let's just say the 16th, right? For argument's sake, the 16th. If we're still below all-time highs by the 16th of November, that's when we need to be getting worried about Bitcoin. If we're above all-time highs on the 16th of November, everything's going to be continuing as planned, and we should be running up exponentially until January, where Bitcoin's going to top out, right? So that's the game plan. This is the last. Well, I wouldn't say this is the last correction, but this is the last lengthy correction, according to the cyclical theory. So 16th of November, we should be above this 67k region, at the very, very, very least above 63.8k, which is our shorter-term target for a higher high, right? So 63.8k, we can see we dropped down, and we rejected here. So we want to get above 63.8k. Once we do that, we're pretty much, clear path to 67. So that's the main objective here, and I just want to reference that. If you haven't seen the last video, go ahead and watch it on Bitcoin, right? I posted like 3 days ago, and it went over the historical trends for Bitcoin. Essentially, November 16th is where we're looking at for the cyclical theory to look at. And if we get past November 16th and we're still in this region, or we're below it, that's a cause for concern, and that's when we need to start evaluating whether the cyclical theory is actually holding. Obviously, we're not just going to throw away a decade of cyclical theory over a few days, but if we head into the 20s of November, 20s, late 20s, that's very concerning, right? Very concerning, because we aren't meant to be seeing correction go for over a month, right? In this deep into the cycle, it's just not meant to be happening. So I would expect within the next few days, we have to be bouncing here. And I suppose I'm making this video to kind of outline what I'm doing, how I'm reacting, what are the key levels, and I'll get into all of that in this video. But, essentially, let's remove the MACD here so we can get a bit of a clear point of view. Well, we had this upwards channel, right? So we dropped down, completely normal, completely on time, everything's gone fine. And I want to give you guys a bit of a reality check here, right? We actually haven't even dropped down that much. It's been 15-16% drop, right? Historically, that's nothing, right? That's nothing. I mean, we'll look here in January 2020, right? We dropped down 30%. We dropped down here a couple months later, 30%. We dropped down here in May. Obviously, this one was a little bit less healthy, 54%. In September, we dropped down over 24%. We're on 15%. So, first of all, I'll take a second, calm down. It actually isn't that big. It isn't that big of a drop. The reason why it feels so big is because, as the valuation of Bitcoin gets higher and higher, the percentages start meaning a lot more. So, for example, when we get to 100k Bitcoin, a 10% correction will be 10,000 USD. A 30% correction, which is very healthy in bull markets, will be 30,000 USD. So, a 30% correction when we're at 100k, which will happen eventually, will take us down to 70,000. So, you can imagine the psychological effect of that is a lot bigger, as the price goes upwards. So, that's the first thing I want to say. But the second thing I want to say is getting into this area, right? And I want to really emphasize to you guys that the volatility we're seeing on a shorter term chart, let's go to the 5-minute chart here, is insane. It's absolutely crazy. Look at this volatility on the 5-minute charts. We started here at 5 p.m. This is Australian time, but the time zone doesn't matter, right? And then by 6:30, we dropped down from 1,600 to around 60,500, right? Very quickly. Most of that drop coming within a 20-minute period. So We dropped below the trend line, and then we came back up, and now we're dropping below it again. The volatility is just insane, and historically it has proven to us that, or it has been proven to us that whenever we see high volatility like this, what it actually is the market trying to sort out the leverage, flush out all the leverage so it can move up healthy in the future, right? We saw that kind of volatility when Bitcoin was up 40k in September, where we saw it down at 29k in June and July, and I don't think what we're seeing now is anything different to what we saw in September or July, right? I think that what's actually happening here, right, is very similar to September in the sense that, well, let's go back to the September region right here. We can see that, well, in September, we had this 40k support. We tested it multiple times, right? We tested it over the period of, a solid over a week, right? Testing it constantly. We wicked down below it, about 2k below at one time, right? What have we seen here? Well, it's taking a bit longer, but ultimately this 60k support line has been tested constantly for a month, right? Almost a month, 3 weeks. And we've wicked down below at one time, about 2k below it, right? So, fundamentally, we're on track with the cyclical theory. Nothing we're seeing currently is invalidating anything. We're holding 60k, in a massive, time frame, and over again, repeated tests of 60k. We're constantly holding it. We've seen 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 13 tests of 60k, and it's broken once, and we were back above 60k within one day. So it's pretty clear to me that 60k is a fundamental support zone, and I'll go as far to say that anything between 58k and 60k is what we really want to see hold. We really don't want to see a drop below that region, and I'll get into technical indicators in a second. But what I want to also point out is if we do see a drop below that region, do you think we're just going to drop straight down? I don't think that's going to happen. I think if we see a drop in that region, we'll have this massive support zone here in which, if we even in the worst case scenario, and we go into a bear market, it will be a slow decline. You don't need to feel rushed, right? You don't have to act right now. I really doubt it's going to be a sharp move down. It will be very, very slow. There's lots of support to kind of cut through there. And I just don't see how that would happen. We have, for example, Bitcoin, without even looking at the cyclical theory, without even looking at the fact that every 4 years it does this in Q4, the point of the matter is that Bitcoin is fundamentally the strongest it's ever been, right? This is the peak of Bitcoin fundamentally, and the price has just come up all the way from 29k to a new all-time high at 67k from 64k. Does it really make sense for Bitcoin to drop down into a bear market right now? I don't think so, right? I don't think that doesn't make sense to me at all, right? 0 cents, but indicators, technical indicators, we're a TA channel, so we have to look at these. The Bollinger Bands, what we can notice on these is that they're tightening, right? And when the Bollinger Bands are narrowing, when they're tightening, it means that a move of high volatility is on the way. Yes, we don't really understand whether that's going to be upside or downside. I think it's going to be upside because I don't think we have much downside left to go. I simply just don't think there's enough sellers, right? We've seen this whole construction for about, as I said, 3 weeks we've been testing 60k. There's not enough sellers to bring this price down. That's my personal opinion, obviously, but I don't think it's going to happen. I think the very, very lowest we'll go is around 58k. Absolute worst case scenario will come down to 53k, but even that is a complete stretch, right? 53k, I'm referencing the high we made here in September. That would be the worst case scenario. What I will say is that anything under 53k is a bear market, in my personal opinion. I don't think Bitcoin can go under 53k and maintain a bull market because we're losing so much support, and what we're doing is we're actually just being thrown back into this massive construction we saw here in May and July and August and September, right? So that's important to note. On the very unlikely occurrence that we see prices below 53k, I reckon it's over. I reckon that 10 years of cyclical theory has been invalidated, and I reckon Bitcoin's done for, to be honest, at least on a shorter term scale. So 53k is ultimately the most critical zone, but I really don't even think we're going to be testing that, right? I think that's just unreasonable to believe. I think that, we probably, we're probably going to, obviously we're going to test 60k. We're doing it right now. It would be possible for us to wick down to 58k again, possibly 57k. But as I said, absolute worst case scenario, 53k. But I just don't see how it's going to happen though, because, we've held this region for 3 weeks. Eventually, the buyers are just going to give up. There's so much euphoria in the market. I know that means that, we need to flush it out, but it doesn't, because we're in Q4 of something that happens every 4 years. When Bitcoin in 2017 went from, 2,000 or something, less, right? 1,000 to 20,000. I can't remember the exact numbers. Do you think there wasn't euphoria in the market? Yes, of course there was euphoria in the market. It didn't mean we needed to crash, though. We crashed at 20k when the cycle ended, right? Which is in December in the last cycle, and due to lengthening cycles, it'll be January this cycle, right? So I think that at a certain point, which is currently Q4 in 2021, right? At a certain point, you need to understand that euphoria in the market isn't actually a bad thing, and euphoria in the market encourages more euphoria. Whereas euphoria in the market way back here in April and March and February, that was a bad thing, right? Because we had plenty of room to go in terms of time in the cycle left. Right now, we've only got 3 months, I think, 3 months left in the cycle, or 2 months, or 3 months, something like that, in the cycle, before the top is predicted to be in by the cyclical theory. So there is time for euphoria and there's space for it. And I think that the fact that we're holding the support zone just kind of proves that, hey, this thing is not going to go down easily. What I will say is that, the Bollinger Bands are narrowing, which means that this compression we've seen for 3 weeks at around the 60k zone is going to come to an end soon. Whether that's upwards or downwards, it's going to come to an end soon. So I highly recommend you keep a close eye on the charts, set some alerts on TradingView. You see I got my alerts here just below 60k and around 63.8k, which is our critical resistance zone in the short term. So the Bollinger Bands are tightening, which represents the moves coming soon. We have the bull market support band, which is around here, all the way down here actually at around 50k. But by the time, and this goes in with what I was saying at 53k, right? 53k is up here. By the time we see a drop down of this region, the bull market support band will be at around that 53k point. So that's why I'm saying if we drop below 53k, not only are we losing the September construction, we're also going to be losing the bull market support band. So we really have to hold 53k if we're going to stay in a bull market here. If we drop below that bull market support band, it's basically over for Bitcoin. So I can see why people are stressed. We're pretty close to that, but realistically, we've got a lot of support before that point. As for the volume, and this is another thing I wanted to point out here, is that we have descending volume, right? And when we see descending volume while the price is descending, so we have descending volume from here, when we see a pullback where there's very low volume, essentially means that it's bullish, because there's not enough, there's not enough selling pressure, essentially. Not enough people selling. There's not enough transactions. It just means that, there's kind of a bit of a pause in the market. It's a very healthy thing that happens during healthy pullbacks. Descending volume during healthy pullbacks usually leads to a bullish continuation, which is good to see. One thing you could say about the daily chart is we have broken this ascending channel to the downside, which is not a good sign at all. But again, it could just be a fake out. We saw multiple fake outs like this in July and September. So I want to end the video here because I want to keep it short, right? Actually, just a few more things before I end the video. I forgot about these. MACD, right? MACD is an interesting thing to look at because we have we're primed. We're primed for a bullish MACD cross, right? We're primed for a bullish MACD cross. And, if we see even slight upwards momentum, again, above 63.8k, close above 63.8k, we'll see a bullish MACD cross that will drive the price really towards the upside, which I'm expecting to happen in November. I'm expecting, as I previously indicated, 80k in November, right? 80k in November, somewhere in the 80k region, mid 80k is most likely in November. And some people would say, well, we've only got 3 weeks for that to happen. I think that's perfectly possible, right? Because November is typically the most bullish month in the market in terms of returns historically, right? So 80k, mid 80ks in November is what I'm leaning towards, unless we drop below 53k. If we drop below 53k, that's it, my personal opinion. I don't think we're going to see an extended bull market at all at that point. I think that's it. So 53k and 63.8k is what I'm looking at, but essentially 60k is the most fundamental zone in the short term. The stochastic RSI, again, stochastic RSI is a very rough indicator. It doesn't really prove to be 100% accurate all the time, but essentially we are very undervalued on the stochastic RSI, and with the MACD prime for a cross as well. That's very good news, to be honest. So low volume on a pullback. MACD's prime for a cross. Stochastic RSI is undervalued. Bollinger Bands are tightening, and we've got a massive support zone that's held for 3 weeks at 60k to 58k. It doesn't look too bad for me, honestly. But what I will say is that you should be exercising a bit of caution, right? Because even though I'm bullish, even though I think we're still fine, I still think that exercising caution is never a bad thing. At what point do I think you should fully start re-entering your trades again? And I'm not saying you should sell. I'm saying that if you have money on the sidelines, at what point should you start re-entering trades? I'd say 63.8k, because as I said, once we flip that construction, we've got no resistance into all-time highs, right? So 63.8k is what I'm looking at, and 60k is what I'm looking at as well. Thanks for watching, guys. Hope you enjoyed, and I'll catch you in the next one.